Today I have a very special and exquisite car on show. But first, let me talk about the history of the car manufacturer Aston Martin. Founded in 1913, they build cars that are suitable for grand touring whilst also being comfortable and exciting. They also star in various James Bond films as a way of showing Daniel Craig in sunglasses, but also the pure elegance of British design. Now, the car I have today isn't exactly as well known as the DB5, which was the predecessor, but ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Aston Martin DB6.
Trouble started, pumpkin instigate.
Wow, I mean there's no other words for saying this, but this car is absolutely beautiful. I think it's probably the best looking classic car in the world. Now, as you can see from the bodywork, the Aston Martin DB6 is very reminiscent of the DB5 with the shark grille and circular lights, which unfortunately doesn't have the miniguns that pop out and shoot various bad guys in the face with, but it's fine because we have a Aston Martin Owners Club badge, which kind of compensates from not having the miniguns from the front lights. Now, I love this car because it's almost the grand tourer of the DB5. As you can see from the rear end, it's much smoother and it represents the contemporary style of a Bentley. So now we move on to the exciting bit, which is the engine. Now, like most classic cars, you have to open it using a specific lever, which is located here under the steering wheel. Simply pull that, close the door. It is a very long process, I will admit, but that isn't a bad thing because it's almost like an art form opening the bonnet of a classic car. And of course, when you do open it, it actually attracts quite a big crowd. So we just open it here. There's a little handle we slot in just there. Come around this side. Again, it takes a while. Put the thing in there and we can admire the engine. Now, speaking of the engine, it has a 4-litre straight 6, and you can see at the back over there has triple SU carburetors, which is basically where the air and petrol is fed into the engine nice and smoothly. Now, this produces 282 brake horsepower with 280 torque, which is pretty much all you need when driving through the French rural countryside while being chased by bad guys in Jaguar Mark IIs. But you can get an option of this car with a 3-speed automatic. This is obviously fitted with a 5-speed manual, but I don't know why you'd get the automatic because, well, you only want a manual in a classic car, you don't want an automatic. So now that we've looked at the engine, we're now going to move on to the side and the rear of the DB6. Now let's first look at the tyres here. Now, Avon is the actual make of the tyre, and the type of tyre used on this car is radial. Now, the rims you can see are pretty much the same as the DB5, and that's not a bad thing because, well, they're absolutely brilliant. You can see here this is quite a unique design of Aston Martin, and they've used that on the DB4, 5 and 6. The badge there just let you know what car you're driving. Obviously you would know because if you just look at it you'll understand what car it is. Now, the door is, well, number one, it's very heavy to open. It's made of aluminium and it's got quite a lot of depth there, and I reckon that could stop one of the Jaguar bad guys shooting you if the bullet probably wouldn't go through that. Close that, and now we move on to the fuel filler cap. There is actually one here and one on the other side, which is very handy and practical, especially being an executive driving this car. You don't want to have to go and waste your time filling up the car, so you just get, I don't know, your passenger to fill it up for you. Now, we move on to the rear of the car, where, as I said, has a very nice, clean and smooth rear end, which is obviously reflecting that kind of Grand Tour style. Now, the lights are a bit different to DB5. The DB5 had circular lights, this has more of a sort of, well, straight light looking thing, and you can see the dual exhaust there, which have silencers. which is the law. Now, what we'll do now is open the boot up and see if we can actually get a body in there, which is obviously our measurement for boots in the Grand Teen. So, having looked at that now, I reckon you could get someone who's about 5'8" in there, which is obviously very important when you have killed the guy in the Jaguar, so you can fit him in there. Now that is a good mark for Aston Martin there. Now we're going to move on to the interior, and I've had the great opportunity to be able to sit in this car. In fact, I'm going to do it now. I don't know what it is, but there's something really satisfying about closing a classic car door. And in fact, it makes me feel a bit more manly, if you know what I mean. But what we're going to do is talk about the pros and cons over this car compared to the DB5. Now, the first thing is the roof is 2 inches higher than the DB5, which means you get more sort of rear passenger room and additional legroom as well, which makes it kind of a true four-seater. The cons, however, there is no ejector seat, which I'm a bit disappointed about because, well, it's part of the Bond sort of theme going on. But that's fine because we do have a leather dashboard up here, which I must admit is really nice. Now we're going to move on to the centre console and the dash. The dash, well, there's a lot of sort of buttons and dials, and the youthful driver nowadays will probably have no idea what any of them do, but that's fine because I'm going to talk you through it now. So we have the wipers here, the selector drive, which means that you can have suspension either soft or harder, which is actually quite cool on a classic car. Water pressure gauge, fuel, some lights, indicators, and we do have obviously the classic dials on the car, which I think is the best part about the whole interior. It's very nice to see, and they are actually used on a lot of the other Aston Martins, you know, the classic ones from the 70s and 60s, and in fact used on Jaguar E-types. So we're going to move on to the centre console now. We have electric windows, very surprising on a 69 car, and we have the obviously analog clock, because I don't want a digital one anymore because they're stupid. And as you can see here, it does have a radio. Now, the original car was, in fact, fitted with a radio, but this one is a bit more updated and new, which means it has the stupid radio stations such as, well, BBC Two, Kiss, and all that nonsense that we did play all now. So what we do have on this actually is an aux cable, which means you can play, I don't know, James Bond theme when you're driving to work, which makes you feel 100 times better. Now, as I mentioned, it does have a 5-speed manual gearbox, and you can see here, it's actually quite a small gear lever, but I think it looks brilliant. I love it. And in terms of sort of room in here, you can't open that, which is a design feature, of course. Now, some more in the interior. We have these Californian tan leather seats, which are very comfortable to sit in, actually, and the sort of similar colour for the carpets here, and it feels really homely in here. I almost don't really want to get out of it. I would just happily stay in here for the rest of my life. But we do, if we look at the seat belts now, they do look like something you get on an airliner. But if we get the seatbelt, you can see the seatbelt itself. This is how high class this car is. It has a hook for the seatbelt, in fact, which is a bit, I mean, it's a bit of an issue if you are overweight and actually try and put the seatbelt on, but never mind, I can do it and it's perfectly fine for me. Very much like being on an airliner, and of course it really gives the illusion that I am on an airliner, and due to COVID I cannot go abroad. But like, again, I don't really want to get out of this car. In fact, it's just such a nice place to be. And this steering wheel here is, well, it's quite a thin steering wheel, but it's, you know, kind of showing the classicalness of the car again. And also with the quarter light here, I mean, that is the definition of classic, I think. Now we're going to touch briefly on the price of this car. Now, back in 1969, when James was a little girl, this car was priced at around £5,000, which today's standard would be what you pay for a shitty little Fiat 500. So actually that is pretty much a bargain back in the day. Now, it has been 51 years, since this car has been released, which means the price has astonishingly gone up by, well, pretty much £300,000, which is what you pay for a Lamborghini nowadays. And in fact, I'd actually rather have one of these because it's everything you want for a classic car. Now, if it is looked after by Aston Martin themselves, it can be priced up to £1 million. Now, of course, I'm not insured to drive this car because I am a teenager, but that's not a problem because we can, in fact, start the car up. Now, when you go into your unusual car, you would think, now, the ignition would be over here. Oh, wait, it's not. In fact, it's over up here, which is actually, I think, a lot better because you can see the keys that go in the car rocking around when you're going above 60 miles an hour. But let's just give a little bit of a brief start-up for you guys. I mean, that is the sound of the 60s. There's nothing better than that, I'm sorry. Sounds absolutely brilliant. The actual accelerator pedal is quite stiff. You have to put a lot of force to rev it, but in the result you get is a lovely backfire of the straight six. Now I'm loving this. I'm going to stay in here forever. So there we are. That is the Aston Martin DB6. Fantastic British classic design with a handcrafted 4-litre straight six engine. I'm just going to leave you in the hands of the Aston, really. I'll see you next week.